Hey everyone, thanks so much for being here today. All right, so today I am going to be talking about elderberries and black currants, and I'm going to be talking specifically about my reading program at the Savanna Institute and the research we're working on there. Do my slides look okay to y'all?
Yeah, it looks good.
Excellent. Okay. So today we are going to be going over a little bit of elderberry and currant history, the research projects I'm working on, and my breeding program. Now, I work for the Savanna Institute. The Savanna Institute is a nonprofit organization dedicated to deploying agroforestry across the Midwest. We are located in several states across the Midwest, primarily in Madison, Wisconsin, and in Urbana, Illinois, but we're spread kind of all over the place. And we are promoting agroforestry as a agricultural system because of all the diverse benefits that it encourages in our food system with diversified crops and diversified farm income sources, and also in terms of ecological benefits such as sequestering carbon, filtering water, cleaning the air, providing habitat, making more comfortable livestock, and a whole host of other things as well. At the Savanna Institute, we focus on seven-ish crops for breeding and a lot more for implementing. Among our breeding crops, we do hazelnuts and chestnuts and mulberries and persimmons, and I focus on the berries in black currant and elderberry. Now, if you've never had a black currant before, they kind of taste like a deep, rich black, like a dark berry, such like a blackberry and a blueberry, mixed with like some resinous deep notes such as like pine, and it's a pretty tart berry, but it's really delicious, and it makes the best jam out of every other kind of berry that you can like easily access. And my background is in sweet corn and blueberries, so I have a leg to stand on, at least in the berry department. Black currant jam is better than blueberry jam. And we focus on black currants. It has a number of boons that make it really appealing, especially as an agroforestry crop. There's a big market for it in Europe already that's been really well established for a long time. And so therefore they've already done a bunch of the breeding. And there's a lot of equipment designed for black currant specifically. They have a really good profit margin in the United States. You're not competing with really high volume crops such as blueberries, where you're trying to eke out a profit and compete with imported goods such as like blueberries coming from Chile and Peru, for example. There is a demand in the US for black currants that is not currently being met. We have clients out in Oregon and New York who are like, I will take 2 truckloads a week of this if you had it to give it to me. And we have a client out in Oregon who's like, I love this berry specifically. Like they named a variety Ecolot. And they're like, I will take a like whole shipment of those if you had it. And we just simply didn't have the stock to sell it to them. And they're a really shade tolerant berry, which makes it especially good for an agroforestry system or fitting into a farm that's already growing other things. Now, some of the challenges of currants is that they have a really complex and unfamiliar flavor that might not be up to the American palate and what it's used to. We're very used to like a eating out of hand berry in the United States. We're not super used to the concept of processing berries. There are a number of diseases that are a challenge in currant, and if you grow currant, you have to do a fair amount of consumer education because people simply haven't heard from them about them before. In currants, we are selecting for berries that are larger in size and firmness, that have a good hang time, both of those traits are for machine harvestability. We want a flavor. I'm going to be working on making the flavor a little bit more fresh eating, eat out of hand kind of qualities, and we're looking for disease resistance. Now, elderberry, if you've never had an elderberry before, I think they kind of taste like also a dark berry, but with the sweetness and the tartness turned down. It kind of has a like a wine quality or like a grassy, earthy quality to it. Elderberries are very well known among the US populace, especially in the health market after increased health consciousness kind of came onto the scene with COVID. A lot of people know what elderberry is and they seek it out specifically. It's a very, very fast growing product. It's almost an annual crop. It's the fastest thing we have in the agroforestry kind of repertoire. And it's a really cross institutional plant. In addition to our work on it in the Savanna Institute, there's also really great research going on in elderberries at the University of Missouri and North Carolina State and Utah. So there's lots of people working on this crop, which is really lovely. But elderberries have had very minimal breeding done. The vast majority of the cultivars you can get on the market right now are selections that, someone found in the woods and thought was particularly good. They're not sourced from intentional crosses in the way that they are for currants or, say, apples. Elderberries also have a bit of a challenge with uneven ripening, and there is no way to mechanically harvest them at this moment. Right now, they're all done via hand harvest and mostly hand processing, though with the advent of wonderful tools such as Mike's destemmer, part of this process can be automated and reduced in terms of labor. In elderberries, I'm selecting for really large cymes, and by cyme, I mean the head or the umbel or the cluster. Large clusters, large berries, even ripening and no shattering. I'm looking for inverted cymes. The cymes do this thing where, like, some of them, when they ripen, they turn upside down and then birds can't eat them, and that's really convenient. So I'm going to be selecting for that specifically. And I'm selecting for less runnering. Now, it's really interesting at the elderberry conferences that happen. I've had growers come to me and say, I love runnering and I want them to do it more. And I've had growers say, I want no runners at all. So there's a variety of opinion among elderberry growers on what they want in terms of that kind of thing. Now, currants are part of the ribes genus. There's lots of things that fall under the ribes umbrella, including gooseberries, red currants, and about 27 to 50 species that are native to North America. They're distributed all across the world, about 300 species total. And part of my breeding effort is also going to be crossing the European elderberry or European currant with the native currant to get some of the disease resistance from the natives and the adaptation to our local region. Their closest horticultural relative is the peony. And you might have seen Zante currants in the store before, especially in the baking aisle. They're like little kind of raisiny things. They often go in scones. And unfortunately, we have a pepper situation here, like black pepper and capsaicin pepper. These are not the currants we're talking about, unfortunately. So these are grapes. They come from black Corinth grapes from the region of Greece that is often abbreviated to Zante at the time. And so, unfortunately, the name currant came from these grapes and then was adopted to ribes nigrum because they kind of look like the grapes. So that's where the name currant came from. It did come second, but for the most part, when I'm referring to currants, I'm referring to ribes nigrum. We used to have a good culture of currants in the United States, in addition to the native currants that have been used by indigenous peoples. Colonists, when they came over, also brought over the European currants, such as the European gooseberry and black currant and red currant. And in the early 1900s, they were grown pretty extensively, up until about 7,000 acres, which is on par with blackberries today. So it's not the most common fruit, but it's a pretty common fruit. You can find it most places. And then in 1906, we discovered white pine blister rust had been imported to the United States. White pine blister rust is a fungus that is inconvenient for ribes plants and deadly for white pine trees and other five-leafed pines. And at the time, the US had really heavily invested in the pine industry because we had deforested wide swaths of New England and they discovered that that was a bad idea. So we were trying to fix that mistake. And there were silly tariff things going on where we were sending seeds of white pines to Europe. They would grow them as seedlings there and then import them back, which is just a terrible disease vector. And so the United States government federally banned ribes for 55 years. We started the first plant quarantine acts. A lot of money was given from Congress to the USDA for the eradication of ribes, and they became illegal to sell, move, or cultivate. So the government employed people to go to farmers' fields, rip out their fields without compensation, take plants out of people's backyards, and go into the woods and rip out all the natives they could find across 20 million acres. They employed the Civilian Conservation Corps during the Great Depression. They used war internees. They used prisoners. And this was a really dedicated effort for a long time. And while the United States was focusing on eradicating the ribes, Canada went, okay, why not? And they researched into currants and this disease and focused a lot of their USDA funding on this kind of research. Like, so for example, one of these studies is they put a stink currant, which is a species of currant, in the center of a field full of concentric rings of pine trees around it and see how quickly the spores would spread and like what range they had. And turns out this is a very far spreading disease, and it immediately left the 1,000-foot radius plot. So the spores spread more than 1,000 feet going from the currants, and they can spread for hundreds of miles coming from the pine trees back to the currants. So it's really hard to put a stop to this disease just through eradication. So Canada also developed white pine blister rust resistant currants, such as Consort. And from this is how we have white pine blister rust resistance in a lot of the currant cultivars we now can purchase and grow. There's also white pine blister rust resistant pines that you can also acquire. So in 1966, we have resistance and we unbanned it. But there is still restrictions or bans on 12 states in the Union, including a total ban, for example, in North Carolina. Globally, we produce a lot of black currants and grow it on about 100,000 acres overall. But in the United States, we grow it on about 450 acres, which is more loganberry, but less than papaya. So really a small amount. One of the challenges of growing currants in this market is also getting them from the farmer's field to the consumer. Now, there's several ways that growers go about this, such as doing U-pick or direct sales. There's a group that I think Mike is in called the Driftless Berry Growers, and the Savanna Institute also trying to figure out this like aggregation and processing and selling pipeline and how to improve it. Now, elderberries have much less of a juicy history, so this will be faster. Elderberries are part of the genus Sambucus, in addition to the American elderberry, which is Sambucus nigra subspecies canadensis. There's also blue elderberry and red elderberry, and they have a wide range across North America as natives. Elder comes from the Anglo-Saxon word eld, meaning fire, because when you like cut a elderberry stem, it makes a nice hollow tube in which you can start flames and embers. And the Ojibwe word for elderberry is fluteberry because they're very good for making flutes out of. In Europe, we're growing elderberry on about 30,000 acres, and in the US, it's about 1,000 acres. And there has been very little breeding done so far. If you are growing elderberries and want to get them to market, kind of a similar thing. You can do U-pick, like Mike does. You can do direct sales, or the Midwest Elderberry Cooperative is one route for aggregating and selling your berries. So that brings me to my research and what I'm doing here, other than the background. I'm trying to get elderberries and currants to have a larger production scale and to figure out a lot of the questions we have about growing them. One of the ways we're doing that is putting currants underneath agrovoltaics to see if they'll work in a system like that, because there's a great win-win of if you're going in agrovoltaics, someone else builds and maintains your deer fence. The land is really cheap or free, and it's easier to get long-term infrastructure that will guarantee your trees can stay in the ground long enough to get a return, and you're not going to get kicked out after a year. But the relationships can be really complex, and access to water and the physical site can be difficult, but it's certainly an avenue worth pursuing if you are a younger farmer or someone who doesn't have land. In our establishment experiments, it seems like establishment was successful on our currants, even though we didn't have water at this site, but we still need to see how they survived the winter. And it seems like the full sun currants established slightly worse than the under panel currants, maybe because they were able to retain more water given that they had shade. We're also working on a weed management trial to test out 8 different strategies for managing weeds and comparing the diseases that may or may not come after that, because if you have more weeds around your plants, they don't establish as well, and there's more hosts for diseases, things like that. But this is too early to tell if there's any results for this yet. We've only been in 1 year, so more data is to come on this trial. Similarly, we're looking at a nutrient management trial because the common wisdom is 100 pounds per acre of nitrogen on currants, which is pretty extensive in terms of nitrogen. So how much nitrogen do currants actually need so we don't have nitrogen runoff from what the plants can't use? It's also too early to tell. We established that trial last year, so more to come. This is just kind of a tease. One fun study was looking at elderflower and how do you process elderflower to have the best flavor come out if you're using elderflower, for example, like tea. So we looked at elderflower dried with freeze dryers and dehydrators and on the counter. And here's a little bit closer so you can see kind of the appearance of them. Freeze dried makes a beautiful white berry, whereas dehydrated and counter dried kind of make a little bit more crinkle crinkles. And we found in a taste test where it was blinded and they did not see the original product that people could not tell a difference between the flavor or the smell of the different preparations of these teas. So if you are interested in selling elderflower and drying it, it doesn't matter. Do whatever is convenient for you. You don't need to buy new pieces of equipment to make a high quality product. And my final bit of research is an elderberry G by E study. That's where we took 12 of the newer varieties of elderberry cultivars and tested them on 5 different locations from Oklahoma all the way to Wisconsin to see how they perform. Overall, the highest yielders in this trial included Cherokee and Pocahontas, though Mike Breckel's Dandy and Delight also had great showings. And in terms of jay beetle damage, it seems that things that yield high tend to also get more jay beetle damage, which makes sense. The more leaves you have, the more you can photosynthesize and produce, but the more things there are on you to eat. In terms of sugars, Brix is a measurement of sugar. The highest our Wisconsin site in terms of higher sugar include Dandy, which is Mike Breckel's variety, East Grove, and Rogersville. Overall, from this results, we found that different cultivars perform differently in different environments, which isn't too surprising. If you are interested in growing elderberries, I recommend planting a lot of different kinds and seeing what works best on your particular field and ground. Overall, Cherokee and Pocahontas have the highest yields and also the most beetle damage. In my breeding fields, remember we are selecting for berry size and firmness and flavor and disease resistant for currants and large cymes and inverting cymes in elderberries. Overall, I'm just a little bee. I'm taking one parent who has great flavor and one parent who has great disease resistance, and I'm cross-pollinating them together in my garage and seeing what offspring come out of that. Overall, I'm planting about 4,000 seedlings per year and evaluating those for performance and less than 300 seedlings per family. We're using a participatory breeding model where I'm giving seedlings to farmers and saying, evaluate these and tell me what you like, because ultimately you're my customer. I want to make products that work best for you. Such as Jess at Wonder Farm in Mount Horeb is doing an establishment trial with me on elderberries and currants. And we also have community U-Pick days. We'll be doing that for both currants and elderberries out in Spring Green, Wisconsin this summer, where the public can come, taste the things in my breeding field, and tell me what they like about them. From our elderberry U-Pick last year, I had 19 plants that were taken and put to the next round of selection because the public liked them so much. We're going to test them more rigorously in replicate. We also do taste tests of different cultivars to see what people like and dislike. And my overall recommendation for you, if you're interested in growing crops such as these, all the Savanna Institute releases are excellent. They all are white pine blister rust resistant. If you're interested in growing currants on a large scale that would facilitate machine harvesting, I recommend Blackcomb, Nicola, and Whistler. If you're growing on a smaller scale, such as a U-Pick operation or a back garden, I recommend Savanna Zing and Savanna Zap. We released those to a retail market this year so you can buy 1 plant or 2 plants instead of the minimum of 25 that comes from the wholesale markets. And if you want white pine blister rust resistance, they're resistant. Here's a little blurb about Savanna Zing, which is one of our new retail releases. We don't recommend this for machine harvest because it gets cane dieback in more stressful environments, such as down in Illinois. And it makes the plant like exhibit this fungus where like single canes will die. which makes it hard for yields if you're going for a big machine harvest field. But if you're going for 3 plants, it doesn't really matter. And Savanna Zap, which is a really wonderfully tasting berry, but it has a spreading architecture. And so that makes it want to lie down, and it's not very good for machine harvesting. My recommendations for elderberries, if you want to plant elderberries, Bob Gordon, Pocahontas, and Ranch seem to really perform well in our trials. And I have tentative recommendations, either because they're harder to acquire or because I haven't tested them as rigorously for Mike's, Delight, and Dandy, both of which performed really well at our sites. But as of yet, you can't buy them at large scale. Jumbo out of Pennsylvania, Marge, and Coop also seem to perform pretty well, but I need to test them more rigorously. If you're interested in learning more, we have grower guides for both of these crops on our website. This is a very good book all about currants if you want to do a deep dive into currants. And I gave a talk that goes more extensively into the history of the black currant ban that I will drop a link to in the chat. All right. Thank you very much, y'all. That's my half of this talk.
All right, thank you so much, Lily. We'll take about 5-ish minutes for questions right now. There are a few in the chat, so let's dive into those. The first question is, can you companion crop elderberry with nitrogen-fixing legumes?
Ooh, Mike has some good things to say about this as well, but it seems like absolutely, why not?
I'm going to jump in here real quick while Lily is answering some questions. I'm going to put a poll up on the screen. The University of Wisconsin-Madison is a recipient of federal funding. And so as such, we have to do reporting and make sure that we are, accurately providing outreach to our stakeholders. So I'm going to throw it up there. It's totally anonymous and participatory. But we do appreciate you filling it out. So I'll just leave it up there for a few minutes. So there's a question in the chat there, Lily. Where do you purchase your stock?
So, the Savanna Institute is a nonprofit, and we have a for-profit spinoff that has a nursery that is called Canopy Nursery, or Canopy Farm Management and Nursery. They have the main license for the McGinnis cultivars, and that's where I purchase McGinnis cultivars if I need to. If I'm looking for weird stuff, I have the great fortune of having a common garden experiment for my breeding field where I get to buy one of every currant and elderberry I can find on the internet. Oh, it's so convenient and nice. It's so fun. If I'm looking for weird stuff, I'm often going to Burnt Ridge Nurseries or One Green World. Both of those are out in the Pacific Northwest.
So how does somebody get involved with the participatory breeding?
If you want to get involved in the participatory breeding, you send me an email and I put you on my little list where each year when I'm considering new farms to include, we email them out and we see what the specs are. Overall, I want to know a little bit about your farm, such as what acreage are you working with? Do you have irrigation? And do you have experience growing these berries before? But I have accepted all sorts of farms into the participatory breeding network, including food forests that are open to the public. We're expanding to a food forest in downtown Chicago this year. And there's not really any minimum or maximum size that can be included. End of sentence.
What is the best Japanese beetle prevention for elderberry on 4 acres?
Ooh, I've always been told that the best Japanese beetle protection is one of those pheromone traps on your neighbor's farm. You want it to be close by, but not too close to attract them to you. I've also seen people who make little apparatuses that are brooms on spinners that go through the field and thwack them into a soapy bucket. I think that's very clever.
Okay, so another one. Did you say we could get a couple of plants to trial of the newer varieties? I'm planting all of these species on my farm, but would be interested in trialing a couple of different varieties in
Ooh.
addition to what our plan is.
Absolutely. I will drop the link on where you can buy a small quantity. We're testing out the retail market for the first time this year. So there's a couple places where you can buy Savanna Zing and Savanna Zap in like a 1 or 2 plants like scale. But otherwise Canopy has like a minimum order of 25. Uh, and we changed the name to kind of indicate that they're like a distinct like market and also to get a little bit of trademark protection on them and to make it clear that they are to be bought as a pair. You don't want to buy one currant because you want them
Mhm.
to have a buddy to cross-pollinate with. They'll put on a way better fruit set that way.
Mhm. And we're going to be sending out a follow-up email, so maybe I could put those resources in that email. That might
Yeah.
be easier. Let's see, another question here. Can you share some general figures on wholesale and retail pricing for black currants? I'm not sure
Um,
answer the berries that you're interested.
Mike might be able to answer that better for elderberries. For currants, I'm often seeing numbers around like $3 a pound for wholesale and like $7 to $8 a pint, which I don't know if it would equate to a pound, $7 to $8 a pint at a farmer's market kind of situation.
Okay. How close is too close for a pheromone trap?
Ooh, what a great question. I wouldn't put a pheromone trap in the plot you care about. I would put it at least 100 yards away, if not more.
Okay. Now. What about elderberry rust control?
Ooh, also a great thing that Mike might be able to talk about a little bit more. My understanding is that while rust is annoying, it doesn't seem too detrimental to the crop. Um, and when I get rust in the field, like the plants still pretty much produce, but you can reduce the amount of sedges in the area to reduce the overall like quantity of rust in your general vicinity.
You had a current book on
I
there.
do. I'll drop the name of that in the chat too.
Okay. And then, yeah. And how well do they overwinter? Are we,
Currants and elderberries both overwinter very well. Currants are very, very winter hardy species and can go down to -40 real easy. So I don't really see any problems with currants overwintering. The problems come in with frosts, but even then they're pretty frost tolerant as plants. And a lot of people coppice their elderberries all the way to the ground, and they overwinter seemingly fine if you do that as well. I just coppiced all my elderberries to the ground yesterday.
nice. So is spreading of cultivars to native areas a problem? I planted native elderberries. Is there a need to help native elderberries maintain their historical territory?
I don't personally think the native elderberries that are growing wild are particularly threatened. They seem to be thriving on roadsides. And the elderberries that we are breeding are the natives, so I'm not particularly concerned with them intercrossing amongst the native population.
What spacing do you recommend for elderberries on less than an acre, and how many varieties would you plant?
If I was starting on a less than an acre, I would go 4 foot spacing between elderberry plants, and I would go at least three varieties, but not more than 10. At least two. This is
How would
great
you,
rapid fire. You're doing great.
I know, how would you harvest tree crops if berries are growing in between them?
Oh,
Or vice versa, I guess.
great question. Oh, you got a stumper. I don't know how tree crops are usually harvested. Isn't it normally just with chainsaw? But okay, here's the thing for you. Elderberries, they want to be coppiced, or they can be coppiced every single year. So theoretically, you can just kind of work around it.
Right.
Currants want to be either pruned or coppiced. My general recommendation for currants is to coppice them every 3 years and to do it kind of on a rotation where it's like, I'm going to coppice this third of the field on year one and then that field, and you can do a rotation like that and then harvest around it. Or if you just want a year to take a break and take a vacation, you could coppice the whole field and then just take that year off.
Okay, let's just do like a couple more here and then we got to get over to Mike's presentation. Coppicing or thinning lateral branches is the same for native elders versus cultivars.
My opinion, yes. And I
Okay.
think Mike will talk about this a little bit more.
Do you have any uses for the coppiced branches in addition to flutes and bee habitat?
In addition to flutes and bee habitat, the currant or the elderberry cuttings are very amenable for propagating. So if you're allowed to propagate it, all you need is 2 nodes and you just stick in the ground and you'll get a plant out of it. In general, the thicker the better, and you still want like kind of newish wood, but if you're coppicing every year, then it's pretty newish wood. But yeah, just shove it in the ground, and as long as you're allowed to do that, you'll get lots more plants. Or you can sell them.
Nice. So does having gooseberries present in locale affect a currant crop?
No, not as far as I'm aware. One thing to note as well, in general, gooseberries don't get white pine blister rust as much as black currants do. Black currants tend to get it more, especially if you're planting non-resistant varieties. I want to encourage caution if you're planting non-resistant varieties. If you really, really want to plant it and there's pines within, a couple acres of you, you can use mineral oil to suppress the spores and to keep them from spreading.
And we'll do one last one here. Are they susceptible to cedar rust as well?
I unfortunately don't know anything about cedar rust.
Okay. That's about it. We have 2 other berries mixed with choke cherries.
Yeah, sure, why not? Yeah.
All right.
Also, if you're concerned about like, for example, walnuts are allopathic with a lot of plants, it seems that they don't inhibit elderberries or currants, so that's fun. Or pawpaws.
Interesting. All right. Well, awesome. What great questions, Lily. We sure appreciate it. And send me whatever links you have just chatted about, and you can either put them in the chat, but I'll also include them in the follow-up email.
Sounds good. Thank you, Anne.
Yep.
All right. Yeah, thanks, Lily. So now we're going to transition over to Mike and his presentation. So for that, I am going to share my screen and the presentation that Mike sent me. And Mike, are you able to unmute?
There
we
can
go.
you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. All right, I'm going to share here. All right, how does that look?
I just have a blank page on my
Okay, maybe
screen.
it just needs a second.
There we go.
There it goes.
Okay, all right, there's a slight delay. Okay, so Mike, you want to introduce yourself and take it away and just let me know when I should transition to the next slide.
All righty, thank you. I'd like to welcome everybody to this portion of the webinar on emerging crops. I'll be talking about elderberries this year, or this session. But before I get started, I'd like to, could you move, next slide, please? Stefan, could you there we go. I'd like to give a great big shout out to Stefan and Anne and everybody else who's helped put this webinar together. I think it's a great example of the Wisconsin idea in action, taking information, testing it, and dispersing it across the entire state and possibly beyond. Thank you for your efforts. I'm going to basically, Lily did a wonderful job with the elderberries. And so that made my job a little easier. So we'll have a little bit more time for questions. My name is Mike Breckel, and I own and operate Ocooch Mountain Elderberries, LLC. You want to go to the next? No, you're right. You're right. Could you go to the next screen there, Stefan?
There's a slight delay.
There you go. That's the right one. We grow and market organic elderberries. We've been growing and marketing organic elderberries for the last 20 plus years on our Ridgetop farm in Vernon County, which is in southwest Wisconsin's beautiful Driftless region. We market our elderberries almost exclusively through a pick your own operation, and people make an appointment. They come out very often as families or as groups of friends, and I bring them out to the orchard, and where I believe the berries will be best picking that day. If they haven't, excuse me, if they haven't picked elderberries before, I give them a little tutorial on how to do it and which berries are the ripest and how to determine that. Then I leave them with a tote, and they pick berry heads to their heart's content, and they bring them back to my shed, and I destem them with a destemmer that I invented. And they leave the farm with whole, fresh, whole, clean berries, big smiles, and hopefully fond memories of a pleasant afternoon or evening spent on the farm. We're also at this time manufacturing and selling our elderberry destemmer. And just a word of pride on my part, I think it's probably the most efficient elderberry destemmer on the market out there. But getting into the elderberries themselves, can we get the next slide, Stefan? Today we're going to be talking about the Sambucus canadensis. As Lily said, can we get the next slide, Stefan? There, now the next one. These are the two versions of the elderberry destemmer. Okay. The canadensis thrives in the wild and in cultivation in the Midwest. It's a woody perennial bush, 6 to 10 feet tall. Although I do have one that I'm trying to domesticate that's somewhere between 18 and 20 feet tall, but a wonderful producer. The crop will produce on the second, or it'll start producing a crop on the third or fourth year. The third, a partial crop. The fourth year, it's your full crop. And my first planting was over 20 years ago, and those bushes are still producing a good crop every year, depending upon weather, of course, with proper pruning, and that's really important. We can get to the next one. Next slide there, please. The bushes produce flower heads that have many, many flowers on a single stem, sometimes hundreds of little flowers on the stem. Those flowers open up about the third week in June and somewhere right around Father's Day every year. And peak season is between Father's Day and around the 4th of July sometime, depending upon variety, of course, and the weather. But I call that the season of hope, because walking down the elderberry rows, the nice mowed rows, it's kind of like you're encompassed in a haze of this wonderful scented elderflower, and it just makes my day. Those flowers that if we can get the next slide there, please. The flowers that are pollinated produce a small berry about 1/4 of an inch across, and the berries spend the next month to 6 weeks ripening, growing and ripening, and harvest here in western Wisconsin starts somewhere between August 1st and August 15th, depending upon weather conditions and the varieties. A ranch is much earlier than most, but some won't harvest until frost or even after frost. I have one that actually I harvest in October after several frosts. It's only a few plants, but they're just nice plants, and they extend the season. One of the things that Lily brought up, and I think is one of the most important things about elderberries, especially in the wild, is that they are very indeterminate. They on a single berry head, you will have berries that are so ripe, your berries are falling off. Excuse me. And you'll have other berries on there that are so green that you have to actually separate those and discard them, or they'll give whatever product you're using your elderberries for an off taste, kind of a green vegetative taste, and that's not necessarily desirable. And Stefan, if we can have the next slide. Commercially, elderberries are propagated, as Lily said, on usually they're woody cuttings. You need two you need two buds, excuse me, two buds. One goes in the ground and one is where your leaves bud out of. Using the first year growth is actually the best. Nice thick first year growth does the best. Those can either be planted directly in the ground, or they can be planted in planting beds to root out. I like to use rooted out plants because my success rate on those is much higher than the others. I get about 75% survival rate with a nicely rooted out plant, as opposed to a 25 to 30% if I just stick them in the ground. Depending upon your setup with irrigation and all kinds of other things, you'll probably get a better than the 30%, but without irrigation on a ridgetop farm, that's what I get. Those cuttings some of them will put out some flowers on the first year. It's kind of important that those get pinched off, so that all the energy that the plant produces goes to the root system. Second year, there are more flowers produced usually, but I like to pinch off the vast majority of those for the same reason. You want those roots to develop a very strong basis, because this is going to be a plant that's going to be serving you for the next 20, maybe even 30 years. And so you want that root system just as strong as can be. That's pretty much my presentation. And because I don't know what you're looking for, I want to open up the next part to questions, and I'll do my very best to answer them. And maybe if Lily's got better answers, she can jump in and help out on that. I don't have any educational background in agriculture. I just love elderberries. But before we get to the questions, I've got a couple things, advice that I give to anybody that talks to me about starting an elderberry orchard. The first is start small. A quarter acre is more than enough to start with. You're going to make mistakes. Learn your mistakes on a small scale, and learn from those mistakes, and at least try not to make the same mistake more than once. Before you even stick your plants, your cuttings in the ground, start to develop your local market. And try to make that market as close to the end producer as possible. That way, your profit is higher, their cost is lower. The third thing is, or the fourth thing is to study your market, talk to your customers, see what they want, see what they like about your product, see what they don't like about your product, much like Lily did with her taste tests. And then expand your operation as your market grows. I fear that if you just try and jump into the commodity market with your elderberries. I don't know too many farmers that have made a decent living selling to the commodity market with any crop. The forces are lined up too much against you. You've got monopolies selling you inputs. You've got monopolies buying your product. And the farmers usually put in a pincher, and profit is very restricted. With that, I'll get off my soapbox, and I'll start answering questions as best I can. And Stefan, if you want to give me, or Stefan or Ann, if you want to give me the questions, that would be great.
Sure. People have been,
Yeah.
there's lots of questions in here. I tried to write down the first couple, but just so they wouldn't get lost. So maybe I'll start with those first, and then Stefan can go with the later ones, and then Lily can jump in with the things that might be more applicable to her expertise. So first question was, how much do you charge for your destemmer?
There are two models. The one that's aimed at people that are just getting started, or people who choose to stay small. That one is 4,250. That one we've did our I only have an acre of elderberries, and so I don't have the huge volumes, especially with the pick your own. So we did a field trial last year, and we did 70 pounds of elderberries in 7 minutes, and another 3 minutes for changing the trays out. So you're up there. You on a small scale, it's everything you need, and also it's set up so that if you do grow, you can basically put a motor right on that same machine without having to buy a bigger machine. The larger the other model is the motorized version. That's for larger growers. We have one man in Canada who basically was doing somewhere between 50 and 75,000 pounds of elderberries a year with that one. He's been doing it for 3 years, and I haven't heard any complaints yet, except that the motor. He says, the motor, she gets so hot. Yeah, I said, Stefan, if you did that by hand, you'd be hot too. And he just laughed. I used the wrong name. I said Stefan, and it's Savanna was his name, French Canadian, wonderful guy. So those are the prices. And that's
Okay.
shipping. That's plus shipping, because that's a variable that I can't control.
I wonder if this is maybe a good time to show a real quick video of your destemmer.
Okay.
Yeah.
We can just show the video and continue to answer questions.
Okay, it's just about a minute clip, and I've got it pulled up. So this is the hand crank version, so it's the slightly less expensive one than the motorized one.
I know I'm getting old, but I don't think I'm that slow.
I think there's a delay with Stefan's video today.
Oh,
a
is it
little bit.
not? Is it not playing?
It's playing, but it's super slow and choppy. But we get a good picture of it.
Okay.
Yeah, this is the one where we did 70 pounds in 7 minutes. And she says that each one of those buckets takes her 3 hours to destem by hand.
Oof.
We did all 7 in the 7 minutes. Can we still take questions? There we go.
Yeah, sure. So next question, how do you harvest above 6 feet? How do you harvest above 6 feet?
Above 6 feet? Basically, the branches, you can bend the branches down. They're fairly flexible. You have to be a little careful, because sometimes you'll break off the branch, and that branch may have more than one seed head on it. So it's if you do it nice and slow, you can just pick them right off.
Sounds good. I'm gonna go back up to where we were here. What soil texture and pH do they prefer, and what range do they tolerate?
I found that they're very tolerant of all kinds of pH levels. Um, and they just they do like full sun, and they do like they're nutrient scavengers. So they will one of the reasons they're in the roadside is because of runoff, both water and nutrients. So they're actually helping to clean up the runoff a little bit by creating wonderful berries. And just so you know, anybody who has questions, and we don't get to them today, I'd be more than happy to try and answer them. If you drop me an email at the address there on there, that final page. I'm happy with that.
And, I know we're getting close to the top of the hour here, but if you have time, we could, stick around and keep recording while you finish answering the questions too. So if someone wants to come later, they can access those questions.
That would be fine with me, yeah.
Pretty easily. Could you go over what time of year you can propagate by sticking the stem into the dirt?
Usually you can, you want them dormant at the time that you do your cuttings. If you cut them late winter, early spring, and the ground isn't worked up, you can keep them in the soil, keep them in the refrigerator before you get them in the soil. I like to cut them the same day that I get them in the soil, though. There's I find a higher percentage of survival with those. And I put almost all of mine into planting beds right into that soil. That can be worked up before the fields are worked up often, so that you get that those roots started real early. I found that you do not want to put them in a greenhouse. You don't want them overly warm, because what'll happen is your leaf buds will break, and it looks like you've got beautiful plants, but the root systems don't develop. And they're just real tiny hair roots on there. And when you put those in the ground, the friction will actually knock an awful lot of those, will rub a lot of those root hairs off. And so you basically have a non-productive plant. It dies.
Do you do any disease testing of those, of like the mother plants? Okay.
I do not. That's one of the reasons why I don't sell. I'm not a nurseryman. That's why I don't sell cuttings. Working on some arrangements where other people can do the nursery part of it.
Do you guys, Lily, when you're selling them at the nursery piece, do any sort of disease testing on those mother plants? No.
Not at this time, we do not. We do not use cuttings that are clearly have stuff going on in them, but we do not do any particular testing.
Yeah. What about this? There's another question down on the list here. What about the spacing between rows and plants? What is optimal?
What I use is 4 foot between the plants, 10 foot between the rows. That gives you about 1,000 plants per acre. And depends upon, you can go up to 16 feet. It depends upon what you want to do with the area between them. If you want to harvest a crop in between them, you might want a little wider so that you can get your machinery through it. My first bunch, I planted 8 foot apart because that was the width that I could cut with my lawnmower. Since then, I've invested in a tractor. And so now that's almost too small for my tractor to get through. So I've gone to 10 foot. If I had to do it over again, I might even think about 12 foot. One of the things that you have to look out for is that after the second or third year, you're going to have roots sending up baby shoots as far away as maybe 7 or 8, 9, 10 feet. So that if you have plants, different varieties too close together, you're not going to know which what the plant is that's popping up there. Just a little heads up. I learned by mistakes.
That's
And
another
we are
thing.
learning from your mistakes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing to keep an eye out too is as your berries drop, that could also be a source of genetic mixing.
Oh, absolutely.
What's your average pounds of berries per plant?
That's hard to say in my situation because I don't know how many plants they've picked from, people that come out and pick their own. So I don't know. My total yields are not nearly as high as somebody who has irrigation. I'm on the ridgetop. A well is my house well will not support irrigation. A well, almost a 500-foot well is what I need, 475. And that just doesn't, I can't justify that. So I take what I get and that's enough. So I can't tell you exactly what my yearly average is. I can tell you that some of the plants that I've developed they're doing really well in terms of that.
Very nice. Lily, can you speak to that at all from some of your trials? What's your harvest?
Can
Fresh
you
weight.
repeat the question? I'm typing a bit about spotted wing stuff.
Oh, sorry, like average fresh weight harvest per plant.
Oh, give me 3 minutes. Let me pull up my yield
Okay.
records.
All right. Maybe Mike, has spotted wing Drosophila been an issue with yours?
It varies drastically year to year. Some years, you never know until you let them sit out because the little larvae don't appear. I have had some bad experiences going to farmers markets trying to sell fresh berries. It was not a good day for berry sales. But one of the ways I send the berries home with people, I warn them about the spotted wing Drosophila. And from my understanding is if you freeze your berries right away, it will kill not only the eggs, but it'll kill the larvae. So that's one way to avoid that. That's why the current market for elderberries is not fresh. It is whole frozen berries.
And do you wash and sanitize the berries after harvest or not?
If I'm going to sell them off farm, yes. But most of mine leave the farm and it's up to the person picking them. They can do with it whatever they want. They can sanitize them or not, their choice.
Okay.
Because they're not going to a commercial. They're just for their own personal use.
Right.
Oh, one thing I wanted to say about the destemmer makes me think about it. It can do elderflower too. It destems elderflower as well. So it's another income source, another revenue source, and there could be a growing market for that in the future because of some of the things they're discovering in terms of I'm going to call it the herbal uses of it, healthy teas and things like that.
Just to jump in real quick, to acknowledge that it is two minutes after 1. Feel free to drop off if you have to go. If Mike and Lily, if you have another 10 minutes or so to get through some of these questions, then yep, I'll finish going through them and keep recording and post the recording, send it out to all of you. But just wanted to say thank you so much for joining us. And like I said, our last webinar is April 2nd. So you can go to our website to register for that one. Okay, we'll continue with the questions now.
Lily, did you come up with an answer?
In 2024 at our harvest yield field, over the course of the entire summer, the plants ranged from a little less than 1 pound per plant to up to 5 pounds per plant of fruit.
Wow. Okay. Sounds good. Let's see. Next question. Could you briefly discuss why white-tailed deer damage is essential to prevent?
That's an interesting question because up until last year, I have I live in deer country. They're everywhere. I mean, we're overrun with deer. And up until last year, I never had any problem with white-tailed deer. They'd come through in spring and taste the leaves as they were just popping out. But I would spray them with the hottest peppers I could. I'd make a solution of that and spray the leaves with that, and that kind of discouraged them. But I would only do that once or twice. I've only had to do that once or twice. The biggest damage that the deer do here is when they rub to take the felt off their horns, and that rubbing will take the bark off the the stems, the stems, and that will kill that particular stem. But that's not till after the season starts usually. So, it's late in the season when that happens. One of the things I wanted to mention about pruning is I don't coppice mine down to the ground every year. I take out the vast majority of the plant, but I basically cut it back to 2 or 3, sometimes 4 stems, and that because all of my plants produce primarily on second year growth, and so if I cut them down to the ground, I get little or no berry production the next year. Some of the varieties that have been developed, especially down south, they basically cut them to the ground and they get a great crop that next year. If I do that, even if I develop those, it pushes harvest back at least 2 weeks. And here we're starting to look at frost by that time. If you look from the middle to the end of September, you're looking at definite frost. So it's just something to keep in mind.
Another thing to keep in mind is if you coppice, it will delay when your plants put fruit on, which opens you up to spotted winged Drosophila more as well. Since the later in the season, the more susceptible you are to SWD.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but thank you.
Okay, I answered a couple of those. Have you had any issues with aphid mites, and how did you deal with aphid? Yeah.
Aphid mites. Aphid mites, I'll make answer too, are a fun one because they make the leaves like shrivel up, and then they make the berries have kind of this really beautiful cauliflower clustering. So they kind of look great, but then they shatter and it's awful. But we had a lot of people select for aphid mite damage in the UPIC because it's so visually striking.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I have it, but it isn't. I don't worry about it. It's just one of the things. I don't treat it, or I haven't treated it in the past. If it gets bad, then I will have to treat it with one of the oils, I believe. So, but
yeah, our site for our G by E, especially in Oklahoma and Missouri, have much more challenges with aphid mite. So it'll probably become more of an issue as we warm, and they treat it with oils and sprays.
Johnny on the spot here with answering these. Okay, about coppicing, can you speak to your rotation across the farm? And what tools do you use, and what do you use with the pruned material? You kind of touched on it a little bit.
Okay, basically I just use I have used in the past just a loppers, a long pruner, and go through and try and select the best. Start with the outside and just keep working your way in until you find some 2 or 3 or 4 stems that are nicely spaced so you can get in there, and also so that you're not, so you got plenty of room for the berries to get sun. I think that's one of the things that helps with making them more determinate. Is that if they're exposed to more sun, they become a little bit more determinate a little less shatter at the end. And I've just started now using my weed whacker to go and basically cut down a lot of them. It's a little faster. I have a blade on there, a wood cutting blade on there now, and I'm experimenting with cutting around it, and then what I take is I take and I chip all those up, all those stems up, and those go on my wife's flower garden. So.
Nice. And what varieties do you grow, Mike?
Well, not 80 to 90% of my plants have come from the wild. I have domesticated them. I used to spend weeks in June just driving around, and I would take a roll of tape, plastic tape with me, marker tape. And when I found a good patch, I would mark it, and then come back in August and see how determinate the heads were, how many of the flowers had been pollinated. And then the best of the best I would take. I call it the lazy man's genetics. Every year, I've got about 30 or 40 different gene lines, I call them, in my 1 acre. And I have about 300 or 400 migrants that come through every year. They eat my berries, and then they sit on the telephone lines and on the fence lines and plant them for me. And so now I walk about a 2-mile radius around the farm every spring and do the same thing. I don't drive around so much anymore, but the ones that I have developed have all come from that 2-mile walk. With all these genetic combinations out there, I figured some of them have to be good. The lazy man's genetics, I call it.
Yeah. No, that works. It seems like we're kind of winding down on questions here. What would be your best organic treatment for mites?
I think it's an oil, but Lily can probably answer that better than I.
Horticultural mineral oil is my understanding, or neem, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And neem oil is what I've heard.
Mm-hmm. Do you have issues with birds eating your berries? And if so, what are your tips?
I believe that birds get a bad rap on that. They're going to take their fair share, no question about it. But unless you're in a flyway, I've ran an experiment. I never had evidence that the birds were really that much of a problem for me. And so basically, I took some plastic and ran it between the rows, 100-foot rows, put plastic on either side of the row. And within, I think it was 3 days, I had up to 20 pounds of berries that had dropped. My belief is that little stem between the berry and the main stem, once the berry is ripe, the plant says, you don't need any more nutrients. So the nutrient flow stops. That little bitty stem becomes brittle, and the weight of the berry drops it off. I think that's what shatter is. I haven't done any, I mean, that's the only experiment that I've done with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thanks, Lily, for popping that link for propagation into the chat.
I'm just like Googling like a fire. Missouri is
No
doing
kidding.
really good research on propagating cutting specifically, and they found that planting them, at least in Missouri, earlier, like as soon as like the plant is dormant, take your cuttings, stick them in the ground. You kind of want the thicker cutting and like earlier in the winter, and then overwinter in the ground. But yeah, I agree with Mike that if they're too hot, they'll pop out their leaves, but they won't establish their roots. So greenhouse can work, and they overall found better success in the greenhouse than in the field. But also, if you're cutting down a full plant worth of things, you're going to get a lot of cuttings anyways.
How about growing from seed?
Oh, I think I'm doing it. I think I succeeded this year. I'm so excited.
Oh,
Um,
wonderful.
oh my God. It's been very stressful because I tried to grow elderberry from seed last year and I didn't succeed because they need to be stratified. And I'm coming at this from corn, which doesn't need diddly squat. So it seems like to germinate elderberries from seed, I've seen things online that say you scarify them or you do a worm stratification, and it seems like that's not super necessary as long as you're not trying to get every single seed. So we looked at scarifying with sulfuric acid, which is very hard to obtain and very dangerous, versus not scarifying and just putting it in stratification. Put them in a damp peat moss for 60 days, and all the roots seem to be popping out of the seeds. So I put them in the greenhouse 2 days ago. So wish me luck.
Good luck.
Thanks. I'm nervous.
Is there a guide anywhere on?
There are lots of different good guides. I'll Google some. But if you look up elderberry seed stratification, you'll find stuff.
Okay. And how about a link to what do you have on your hat there, Mike? Somebody is asking a link to the organization on your hat. What do you have on there?
That just says driftless. That's just the area I live in.
Do you
There is
have a link for the driftless berry growers?
I believe there is. I don't have it. But if you Google driftless berry growers, I think you'll find them.
I haven't succeeded yet.
I should say find us. Otherwise email me and I will find a link and get it back to you.
Oh yes, please, Gail. Please send me the link. I want to send people to the driftless berry growers all the time, and I'm never quite sure where to go.
It's a rather loose group, loosely connected group. But
Gail also does amazing
doing
work
good
with
work
elderberries in the chat, and Gail is an excellent advocate for elderflower, especially.
Oh, yes.
Oh, hi, David. Oh, it's a who's who in the chat. Look at this.
All right, I think that's about all the questions. Stefan, if you want to wrap it up.
Yeah, not much else to say except thank you so much to Lily and Mike for taking the extra time to answer all the questions. And thanks for joining us and all great engagement and questions. That's all I have. You'll get an email from Anne within the next few days with a link to the recording and some of the resources that we talked about. So thanks, everybody.